The film begins at late night where an employee is on his way home. The group of men took the taxi that she saw first, so she could do nothing but walk to the highway. As she walks down the dark road, a van pulls up driven by Dushik and offers to take her home. But the woman rejects Dushik because she doesn't go with someone she doesn't know, and then she leaves. Before the woman had gone far, she heard a noise calling for help from the van. Wanting to help, she approached the van and peered inside. Inside she saw hanging clothes and a lifeless person. It turns out that the noise she heard came from Dushik, and then he suddenly pulled her inside the van and killed her for no reason. A few moments later, the police that Dushik called arrive, and you notice that he has already changed into clean clothes. He pointed to the location where he left the corpses, and so as not to suspect him, he pretended to be anxious. He also made up a story to the police that he did not intend to see the workers killed the victim. On the other hand, in a call center office where a mute and deaf Kyung-mi works as a customer service agent in the sign language department. Most of the customers she meets are kind, but customers with rough behavior cannot be avoided either. After work she joins a company dinner with some clients. The clients were amused by her being mute and deaf. They mocked and insulted her, but they didn't know that she knew what they were saying because she knew how to read lip movements. In return, she used sign language, and the clients didn't know that was another insult to them. After they had dinner, she picked up her mother, who is also deaf and mute and works in a sewing factory. When she saw her mother, she signaled her not to hurry because there was a motorbike coming. Her mother didn't understand that. Luckily the motorcycle didn't hit her. After her mother got into her car, she happily announced that they now have money to use for their vacation in Jeju Island. On the other hand, a beautiful girl So-young is about to leave their house to go to her blind date. But his brother Jong-tak, who is a security guard, did not like the clothes she was wearing. So she was forced to change. His brother became overprotected since their parents disappeared. And when she was leaving she promised to come home early. While Jong-tak was on duty, he noticed that So-young was ignoring his text messages. When he got home from work, his sister was still not at their house, so he was worried. He tried to call her, but no one answered, so he decided to look for her. It's midnight and Dushik is waiting again for a new victim. He saw Kyung-mi leave her mother to find a parking space. Kyung-mi's mother became Dushik's target, but when he met So-young, he changed his mind and chose So-young first. He runs fast to catch up with So-young and attacks her. After finishing with her, he goes to check on the mother, but his plans keep getting interrupted. First, Jong-tak stops by to ask the mother if she's seen his sister, leaving after receiving a negative answer. Then, Kyung-mi returns from the parking lot. On her way to meet her mother, she notices a white shoe suddenly appearing from a dark alley, accompanied by someone calling for help, though she can't hear the words. When a second shoe emerges, Kyung-mi decides to venture into the alley and discovers So-young, crying and bleeding, pleading for assistance. Before she can react, Dushik appears with an axe and lunges at Kyung-mi, but So-young pushes him away, giving Kyung-mi the chance to escape. She dashes back to the street and, spotting her mother, decides to run in the opposite direction to protect her. Kyung-mi races back to the parking lot and hides among the cars. As she moves toward a back door, she notices the handle is very squeaky. Carefully, she begins to turn it, but Dushik hears the noise and starts to pursue her. Just in time, Kyung-mi manages to open the door. It's chained on the other side, preventing her from fully opening it, but the gap is just wide enough for her to slip through, leaving the larger Dushik behind. Kyung-mi reaches her car and calls her mom, instructing her to wait by the alarm. But just after she hangs up, Dushik suddenly appears in the back seat, knife in hand. He forces her to drive, but instead of heading out of the building, she swerves toward the wall, stopping just before a crash. Seizing the moment, she escapes from the car. A frantic chase ensues, but Kyung-mi manages to reach her mother before Dushik can catch up. When she presses the alarm button, it prevents Dushik from approaching. While the women wait for the police, he retreats to his van. There, he hides So Young's body and changes his clothes and hairstyle to resemble an ordinary businessman. Approaching the women with a casual demeanor, Kyung-mi doesn't recognize him. The killer had worn a mask and hat. When he claims to be looking for his sister, she believes him. Just as she's about to take him to the dark alley, the police arrive, but the officer finds the alley empty. Concerned, Kyung-mi asks to see the security footage, only to learn from the parking lot guard that the cameras have been turned off by kids who hang out there to smoke. The three of them are taken to the station to file a proper report. In the elevator, Do-shik keeps glancing at the weapons in his bag before turning to look at the women. Kyung-mi's mother notices this and thinks he doesn't seem very sad anymore. To maintain his facade, he pulls out a black phone from his bag and tells them he's relieved to have received a text from his sister, indicating that the body isn't hers. Moments later, Kyung-mi finishes giving her statement, but the officer informs her that he can't do much without a body or a physical description of the killer. Do-shik offers to help with that, but the cop scolds him for interrupting other people's statements. A nearby homeless man, who has been sleeping on a couch, seizes the chance to insult Do-shik as well. Seeing an opening, Do-shik walks over to the water cooler. While filling a cup, he mutters an insult under his breath toward the hobo, ensuring the officer can't hear them. This infuriates the man, who immediately lunges at Do-shik to strike him. In the scuffle, Do-shik drops a white phone on the floor, which Kyung-mi's mother quickly picks up. The cop pulls the hobo away and takes him to another room. Seizing the opportunity, Do-shik retrieves his phone and approaches Kyung-mi's statement, using it as an excuse to check her personal information. As he reads, Kyung-mi's mother discreetly signals to her that it's suspicious for him to have two different cell phones. When Do-shik notices their silent conversation, he demands to know what they're discussing. Kyung-mi simply writes nothing for him. Do-shik then steps closer to Kyung-mi's mother and starts rummaging through the weapons in his bag, contemplating his next move. At that moment, a cop enters with Jong-tak, who is trying to report his missing sister. The officer instructs Jong-tak to show the picture to the others since the description matches Kyung-mi's statement. Do-shik pretends not to recognize the girl in the photo, but Kyung-mi immediately identifies her and offers her statement for him to read. As Kyung-mi attempts to provide more details, the cop leaves the room to deal with the hobo trying to re-enter. Do-shik seizes this moment to warn the mother not to move or he'll kill Kyung-mi. He reveals the contents of his bag, pulling out a knife and advancing toward her daughter. In a desperate move, the mother creates a loud noise that alerts the others. Jong-tak turns around just in time to intercept the knife, and the two men begin to fight as the women rush outside to call the cops. Do-shik admits to hurting So Young, which sends Jong-tak into a rage. He starts pummeling Do-shik and even grabs the knife, pressing it to Do-shik's neck, demanding to know where his sister is. Their confrontation is abruptly interrupted by the arrival of the police. Do-shik quickly shifts to playing the victim, and due to the compromising position they're in, the officers believe his story, leading to Jong-tak's arrest instead. Do-shik walks away free, while the women stay with Jong-tak as the cops review the security footage, which confirms their account of the events. As Jong-tak heads back out to search for his sister, the police take the women to their apartment, which is equipped with motion sensor lights. While mother and daughter enjoy some tea, the lights suddenly flash, indicating someone is at the door. They feel a rush of anxiety since it's so late, but it turns out to be the mother's coworker, who has come to pick up some bags. The two elderly women leave together, leaving Kyung-mi alone in the apartment. Unbeknownst to her, Do-shik has arrived and disabled the sensor outside the door to avoid detection. However, his movements inside the apartment are still detected, so when Kyung-mi leaves her room to investigate, Do-shik triggers an alarm clock to ring, making her think that's what set off the lights. After returning to her room, Kyung-mi texts Jong-tak, who had given her his card in case she needed anything. Meanwhile, Do-shik finishes disabling the other sensors in the house and grabs his axe, preparing to strike. Just then, Kyung-mi notices that a toy on her dresser has been activated, but the lights remain unresponsive. Turning around at the last moment, she narrowly dodges Dushik's attack. She bolts into another room, barricading the door with a dresser, and quickly texts Jong-tak to warn him that the murderer is there. Then she sends a message to her mom, urging her not to come back. As the door stops shaking, she receives a text from her mother saying she's already home and finds the door ajar. Alarmed at the thought that her mother might be in danger, Hyungmi starts to push the dresser aside. However, as more texts from her mom asking for help come in, she notices that the spelling is unusually perfect. Her mother usually doesn't type that well. Realization hits her. Dushik has her phone. Just in time, she stops moving the dresser as he appears in the gap of the door, ready to strike. Dushik lunges to grab Hyungmi's hand, but she swiftly yanks it away and locks the door in his face. Undeterred, he starts hacking away at the door with his axe, determined to break through. With no other escape, Hyungmi leaps out of the window, but Dushik catches a handful of her hair as she falls. Hyungmi fights fiercely against Dushik's grip, managing to break free and land safely in a pile of trash. Without hesitation, she starts running again, with Dushik in hot pursuit. Soon, Jong-tak appears and joins the chase. After weaving through dozens of blocks, Dushik finally corners Hyungmi in a dead-end alley. Just as he's about to strike, Jong-tak arrives on the scene. To stop him from attacking, Dushik takes the knife and threatens to take his life, which would leave Jong-tak unaware of his sister's location. With Jong-tak immobilized by Dushik's threat, Dushik sends a text to his phone with So-young's supposed location, forcing him to choose between the two girls. Jong-tak, regretful and conflicted, apologizes to Hyungmi before running off to find So-young at the address Dushik provided, Hyungmi's house. However, Dushik has deceived him. The house is empty, and the only person Jong-tak finds is the mother, who arrives home just as he does. Meanwhile, Hyungmi, desperate to defend herself, grabs a chair from the trash, but Dushik quickly snatches it from her and uses it to pin her to the ground. As Dushik uses his phone to taunt Jong-tak, calling him a bad person for abandoning Hyungmi, she seizes the moment and grabs a handful of dirt, throwing it at his face. The distraction gives her just enough time to push him off her and break free, running once again. She heads toward the street where Dushik's van is parked, and as she gets closer, she sees the door open and So-young emerging with a knife in her hand, asking for help. Meanwhile, the mother and Jong-tak arrive at the dead-end alley, only to find it empty. The two girls, hiding behind a trash container in the alley, hold their breath, hoping not to be discovered. Hyungmi urges So-young to call 911, but So-young refuses, hearing Dushik nearby. He's realized there's nobody in the van and is closing in on them. Hyungmi quickly comes up with a plan. She writes a message on her phone telling So-young to call her brother because he's nearby, then hands her the phone and takes the knife in return. As Dushik turns his back, Hyungmi slips out of the alley and hides again, only emerging when she sees Dushik about to discover So-young. She lets out a strange noise and rattles a nearby metal shutter, drawing Dushik's attention. Then she takes out the knife, threatening to take her life and robbing him of the pleasure. Hyungmi hits the alarm on the pole one more time to distract Dushik, then takes off running, reigniting the chase through the streets. Meanwhile, So-young, frantic, calls her brother for help, and he and their mother scramble to reach Hyungmi, bringing an ambulance with them. So-young provides them with the direction Hyungmi has gone in, hoping they'll get there in time to save her. As she crosses a busy street, she struggles with the traffic, unable to hear the cars coming. After a few close calls and heart-pounding moments, she finally makes it to the other side. Hyungmi, now desperate, makes her way toward downtown, hoping that the crowds of people will offer some cover and make it harder for Dushik to catch her. Stumbling into a commercial area, she runs up to people, desperately trying to ask for help, but without being able to speak, they don't understand her urgency and ignore her. The crowd continues on, oblivious to the danger she's in. Dushik closes in on Hyungmi, and with no other option left, she pulls out the knife, holding it defensively. The crowd quickly steps back, forming a circle around them as the tension builds. One man from the crowd tries to call the police, but Dushik intercepts him, claiming that it's her sister who has mental issues and that the police would only scare her into hurting herself. This moment of confusion and hesitation gives Kyungmi a brief window of opportunity. She quickly takes advantage of the distraction and runs. However, moments later, the police arrive, finding Kyungmi alone and confused. They take her into custody, believing Dushik's story, and even return the knife to him. As they leave, Kyungmi breaks down in tears. Through the few sounds she can make, she pleads with Dushik, begging him not to kill her, telling him she still has so much left to live for. Not wanting to do this in front of the crowd, Dushik drags her to a nearby alley. There, he coldly tells her she almost convinced him, but it wasn't enough. As he prepares to stab her, the air grows thick with impending doom. And Kyungmi's desperate sobs echo in the silence of the alley. Just as Dushik raises the knife to strike, Jong-tak arrives, rushing in just in time to stop him. The two men clash in a violent struggle, but Jong-tak manages to overpower Dushik, wrapping his arm around his neck in a chokehold. Dushik finally goes limp, passing out in his grip. Jong-tak lets him go and quickly rushes to Kyungmi's side. He reassures her, telling her that So-young is safe at the hospital and their mother is nearby, trying to calm her fears. But before he can offer more comfort, Dushik suddenly revives. He wasn't out for long and now, furious, begins lashing out at Jong-tak with empty bottles and anything he can find in the trash. Kyungmi, in a desperate attempt to stop the violence, grabs the knife and threatens him with it. The sight of the blade forces Dushik to pause and rethink his attack. Realizing he's no longer in control, Dushik makes a swift decision to retreat. He leaves the alley and heads into the commercial area, where he spots Kyungmi's mother. He approaches her, asking her to follow him into a dark alley, likely planning something far worse. However, Kyungmi sees what's happening from a distance. With the knife still in hand, she runs after him, determined to protect her mother and put an end to this nightmare once and for all. Dushik mocks Kyungmi cruelly, laughing at her failure to stab him, pointing out that she only managed to wound his hand instead. He didn't know that was part of the plan, she made it look like he stabbed her. The crowd believed what Kyungmi did and everyone didn't believe what Dushik said. When the police arrive they immediately give a warning shot for Dushik, but he doesn't listen and still keeps moving. The police have no choice but to shoot Dushik for him to stop. Even though Dushik got shot he still managed to move and try to attack Kyungmi again. Luckily, Jong-tak arrives and tackles Dushik to the ground where he ultimately meets his end. Days later, Kyungmi and her mother finally go to the beach for the vacation they had dreamed of. So-young and Jong-tak join them, and after demonstrating some sign language they've been learning, the four of them pose together for a picture. And that's where the story ends. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also hit the notification bell to get updated on every video that we upload. Thank you and have a great day.